Rabbit Hole Roundup, episode 32. Is Tucker's awakening for real? For real? If you know what I'm saying? In today's new Rabbit Hole Roundup, I'm going to be reviewing some of the interesting claims that Tucker Carlson recently made on Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm going to be talking about how I like some of the things he's saying, and I like where he's heading with it, and also like reasons to be skeptical a little bit.
You never know.
I'm also going to be talking about this tweet where Jeremy Boering from the Daily Wire basically demonized asking questions on the official narrative, and how I believe it's so much more important to understand how our rights come from God and not from the government, and how dangerous it actually is to fall into that trap of idolizing country and idolizing government as opposed to understanding our own God-given rights and our God-given purpose for being here. I'm also going to be covering a bit about my thoughts on what's going on with all these protests, and how initially there was a legit point to be made, and there still is actually a legit point to be made, but as with every other protest basically since the 60s,
you're living in the past, man. You hung up on some clown from the 60s, man.
They'll get infiltrated, co-opted, etc. And then depending on how much time I have after all that, I may share my thoughts on this interesting post I saw on Instagram the other day, and how and why I believe in the importance of questioning everything, and why I actually love the whole conspiracy culture, because it ultimately leads you to spirituality if you use it the right way. But as with everything else, it's a tool that can be used for good or bad, depending on the person using it. And I may be covering a little bit about how Joe Rogan actually recently also had Bart Cyberl on his podcast, who's famous for going at some of these astronauts and asking them hard questions and proving that none of them went to the moon, and how none of them would actually swear in the Bible that they went to the moon. So we have a lot to cover today. Without further ado, let's dive into this.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the Jared and James channel. I'm Jared Weiss. If you guys didn't know that, must mean you're not subscribed to the channel, so you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on this video. Follow me on every platform. So, first off, feel free to comment or drop a like on my awesome new haircut.
I like it, cut G.
Think I'm looking pretty fresh right now. And also, I hope that all you guys have been enjoying the recent guests who I've been having on the Rabbit Hole Roundup, whether it was Alice Stone, aka the Ancient Ninja, or Josh Monday. I think all my guests have been awesome. Each one has such interesting viewpoints and interesting perspectives to offer. So I hope that all you guys who have followed me from them, I hope that you guys enjoy my content, and I hope that you guys are enjoying everything that I'm doing with this channel and the direction that it's all going in. So, what were some of the explosive claims that Tucker Carlson made when he went on Joe Rogan's podcast? First off, he brought up the whole 9/11 being an inside job, and how Alex Jones actually predicted that, and how Building 7 doesn't just go down without being hit by anything.
It just don't add up.
And how there had to have been some type of explosives that were already in there, and how all this was actually being used in order to demonize the Iraqi leaders, and then end up carpet bombing the whole place, and then never actually finding any weapons of mass destruction. So I don't remember how deep Tucker actually went into that, but when you realize that George Bush was actually friends with Tim Osman, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that on here, but how he was actually connected to the guy who we ended up calling Osama bin Laden. 19 hijackers take over a plane, and then some of the phone calls. Alright, so I'm sure there's plenty of awesome documentaries out there on that, but I don't want to dive too deep into that, so that this way my channel doesn't get taken down. But Tucker brought up some interesting points with how he used to believe that 9/11 was a whole terrorist operation, and then he started to realize how our government does some shady stuff in order to take resources, and in order to knock out some powerful people, and to quote-unquote impose democracy on others. How is taking people's lands away, how is carpet bombing them, how is that spreading more democracy?
It's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation.
I don't know about that. And another powerful point that I thought Tucker brought up was he spoke about how we're essentially in the spiritual warfare, and how this idea of aliens coming from other planets is nonsense, basically. Which, as many of you know, I fully agree with that. And he said that the aliens, quote-unquote, aren't going to be coming from outside. They're actually going to be coming from our own world, and possibly even from other dimensions, possibly the Nephilim. There's definitely other life forms on Earth, I believe. Whether it's the Nephilim, whether it's any of these human-dog hybrids, or X-Men, quote-unquote, which I'm going to be talking about with Tyler Hansen soon. But as I've spoken about in the past, and I'm not even sure if Tucker has gone this far yet, but this idea of extraterrestrial means more land, which I believe is more land beyond the ice wall.
You just blew my mind.
beyond Antarctica. And also, if any of you have ever looked into any of these DUMBs, aka deep underground military bases, there's likely so much technology in this hollow earth or under our own feet that we've never seen, that we've never been exposed to. But like, when we see any of these UFOs flying around, could it just be our own government showing off some of the new technology, but then getting us to believe that there's some other planet threat, even though the other planets are just wandering stars, and no, you can't land on any of those luminaries? But where I'm skeptical of Tucker a little bit, as Paul Staub said recently on his own podcast, and he was a guest on here a few months ago, he spoke about how could Tucker be using this idea of talking about all these extraterrestrials and UFOs and how he's been exposed to some classified documents. Could this just be a way of ushering in Project Bluebeam and getting us to believe in the whole alien agenda nonsense? Could be, but like, having said that, I do like how Tucker is talking about the Nephilim, how he's talking about these interdimensional beings that we can't see based on our own light spectrum and based on also like all the toxicity that all of us have been exposed to, because I actually believe that things like Bigfoot, Sasquatch could possibly be living among us, but like, we just don't see it because all of our pineal glands have been so clouded and so toxified. But I do see where Paul Stubbs is heading with this, and so when it comes to any of these big name people, when it comes to any of these people who are getting millions and millions of views,
Billions and billions.
I'm always going to be questioning what their intentions are and what their motives are. So do I think that like Tucker could be some form of control opposition? Possibly. I'm not going to put that out of the question, especially considering how I've heard some people talk about this one pin that Tucker wears. I'm not sure what it's related to, but then like years ago, he was also trying to get into the CIA, but he was denied. But having said that, I do think it's important to allow people to change. I mean, have any of us truthers ever had all the right information that we have now?
Oh, hell no.
No, we were all once lied to, and we were all once believing those lies. So it is important to be able to allow people to change. I mean, Tucker even admitted this. He admitted how he used to fall for the mainstream narrative. He used to spout all this stuff that he actually realizes now was totally false. But we have to allow people the space to evolve and to change their viewpoints, because otherwise we're not actually becoming an inclusive community. We're actually becoming the same people that we've actually been speaking out against in the whole mainstream. Now, of course, there's another side that says if any of these high-up people on TV, people who have millions of followers, if they were real truth seekers and truth speakers, they'd be offed. And also, as Sam Tripoli often says from Tinfoil Hat podcast, Tucker also destroyed the career of Gary Webb years ago, an investigative journalist. So of course, once again, we do have to remain skeptical of anyone, especially any of these people who are super famous. But I say we also have to remain open to people changing.
You can change, you can adapt.
Their beliefs. Remember, none of us are perfect. We need to allow people the space to wake up. And another point that I thought Tucker made, which was very powerful, but like, I'm also going to push back a little bit and offer up some questions of my own. So Tucker brought up how Hiroshima and Nagasaki and dropping these atom bombs on the people of Japan is wrong, and anyone who advocates for that is wrong. And I fully agree with that. If you're advocating for innocent civilians of any country, of any place in the world, to die for no reason, that is actually inherently evil. And I know that all of us have been brainwashed to believe that we're spreading freedom by doing that and we're spreading democracy, but like, just think about it for a sec. Why should innocent people have to die for the actions of their government? Doesn't make sense. But one thing I will say, which B.O.B. actually brought up brilliantly in his song F Science Bro, how does someone film an atomic bomb and it doesn't destroy the camera? So like, are atom bombs real? Or has this threat of nuclear
bombs that we would know about.
Nuclear!
bombs and this idea of the president having the nuclear button to blow up the whole world, has it just been like exaggerated and used to push people into the state of constant fear that if the wrong guy gets into office, they're going to destroy God's creation and they're going to destroy the whole world? I have my questions about that. Now, of course, bombs are real, of course, all these weapons are real, and of course, the US did actually use some type of weapon, whether it was an atom bomb or just like a bunch of small bombs in Japan, and I think that was wrong. And also keep in mind, Pearl Harbor, inside job to get us on board with war, because initially, the US didn't actually want to go to war in World War II. So how do you get a whole country riled up and get everyone wanting to go overseas to fight? You stage an event. Some other points about Tucker that I actually liked. I like how nothing sounds scripted when he's talking. Now, ultimately, I don't know whether he's controlled or not. He might be control opposition. I mean, to get up into that position of power is tough if you're not controlled. But regardless, he's saying some very interesting stuff. He's saying a lot of truth right now. He seems to be having a genuine awakening, which I hope is the case. But ultimately, I say take what resonates, do your own research, listen to what these guys are saying, don't take anyone's words as the truth or as ultimate fact, and discard whatever doesn't resonate with you. But allow people to have the space to awaken and to change their beliefs. And this leads me into my next topic, which is Jeremy Boering, who's one of the heads of the Daily Wire, basically came out and said, with regards to Tucker Carlson's interview, that anyone who questions the moon landing is danger and hates our country. So the tweet actually said, people who deny the moon landing or suggest America is evil for its use of atomic weapons against Imperial Japan, or who say that George Bush was behind 9/11, actually hate this country. Well, I guess by that logic, I guess I hate this country. Now, I think it's important to remember, do our rights come from God or the government? I think above all, we have to remember to love God, to love each other, to love all of God's creations, not bow down or idolize the government or to idolize our country. And yes, I have no problems if anyone says they love our country, they love the land that we're living on, because of course, there's nothing wrong with that. I love where I'm currently living. But you start to get into some muddy waters when you start talking about it's dangerous to criticize our government, and it's dangerous to criticize any government in the world, and it's dangerous to ask questions about possible wrongdoings that our government did in the past and questioning the official narrative. If you want a country or a world as a whole that's founded upon truth,
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
which the Daily Wire is supposed to be about, then you need to allow people to ask questions. And in the words of B.O.B., in one of my favorite all-time songs, Stanley Kubrick, which talks about the fake moon landing, footprint don't match the boot, been to the moon once, ain't been back since, and I'm just trying to figure out where the tax dollars went. Or, guess we must go straight to the source, let's ask NASA. How do you explain the occurrence of lunar waves? Why do we only see one half of the lunar face? How do you explain air bubbles you view in space? Why is it so important to lie to the human race? Million-mile internet that travels light years, but they can show a space shuttle re-enter the atmosphere. Okay, it's a blast off. You gotta practice Freemasonry, an acronym that stands for not a space agency. And guys, as we've gotten into super depths in past episodes, and I'm sure I'll continue to do so in future episodes, all the points that discredit the moon landing and this idea that it's even possible to go to the moon. But if you're someone who's criminalizing or demonizing asking questions, what does that make you? And this is the whole reason why I'm so adamant when it comes to censorship and shadow banning being a huge problem. I mean, has a question ever hurt anyone physically? I don't recall that ever happening.
He hit me!
Okay.
He hit you!
Okay.
You hit us!
And if you demonize asking questions, people are going to inherently ask more questions. Why is it so important to lie to the human race? And why do you people who would defend that lie to the human race? I mean, don't we deserve to know the truth about the moon landing, 9/11, Pearl Harbor? I don't see how asking these questions makes you an enemy of the country, unless maybe you're a control opposition and you're trying to make people blindly obedient to whatever our country's narrative is at the time. I thought you guys at the Daily Wire were supposed to be all about free speech and questioning things. Or does it only apply to certain things that are approved to be questioned? And this is the same thing that's going on with these guys who are telling you that you can't criticize Israel. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Israel does not mean the Jews. Israel might be hiding behind a specific religion, but it doesn't mean that every person who's Jewish has to agree with everything that the Israeli government does. It's the same thing when it comes to the United States. I could stand up for and support the American people without supporting the American government. They're two totally different things. Not everyone thinks in a monolith. And I actually fully agree that it is wrong to blame the Jews, or to blame the blacks, or to blame the whites, or to blame the Catholics, or the Muslims. We need to start seeing every person as an individual. We can't allow people to hide behind groups, because that's when you end up with actual racism, and actual anti-Semitism, and actual hatred for other groups of people. And of course, there are people within each of those factions that are causing problems, but not every person within that group is part of the problem. I mean, I'm someone who's born and raised Jewish, and I'm critical of the Israeli government and what they're doing with genociding essentially the Palestinian people. But we need to be careful in not stopping freedom of speech. I'd much rather live in a country where people are free to say whatever they want.
Word, we already played Babble like an idiot.
Even if it's hate speech, because what's going to happen is you're going to have other good speech that's going to drown out that hate speech, as opposed to hiding it and telling people, like, they can't criticize this country, or they can't do this. As long as you're not actually calling for violence against a certain group of people, which I obviously fully disagree with, then I think we should be allowed to say whatever we believe, because that's the only way that you actually end up with real discourse, and that's the only way that you actually get to objective truth. And it's this whole concept of telling people what they can and can't talk about, what they can and can't question, that leads to people like me getting shadow banned on every platform for asking questions, for questioning the official narrative, and for trying to spread truth, love, and positivity. But I'm considered the bad guy here.
You bad man! You very, very bad man!
Now, I don't want to get too far into that topic, especially because I've already addressed that with RJ in one of my past Rabbit Hole Roundups, which had to do with war, what is it good for? I think it was called. And like we actually had like another episode where like we also addressed like some of the stuff that was going on in the whole Israel, Palestine, Hamas war and everything that's going on in the Middle East. But just to reiterate, I support all good people, whether Jews, Christians, Muslims, non-religious people, blacks, whites, browns, Asians, Americans. But what I don't support are governments, and I don't support full countries. And also, like, I do actually have a nuanced take on religion and spirituality as I've developed in recent years, in how I actually see everything as a tool that can be used for good. But like, I don't think that any one religion is right or any one religion is wrong. I believe that like there's something to be learned from all of them, and it's also important to be questioning everything, because I also believe that every text, I'm sure, has been manipulated in this effort to cause division and to cause more issues. But as with any tool, if you're using it for good, then that's awesome. I don't want to be the one who's telling someone like something that's working for them and making them a better, kinder, healthier person is bad, because I don't see anything as being all bad or all good. Because this concept of duality, and because, as L. Stone said, the matrix is actually within us. So like, at the end of the day, it's up to us to alchemize everything and make every situation and to use every tool how we see suits us best. And getting back to the protests that are going on, I'm sure that every side is being funded by the same people in order to sow division while innocent people are dying. So like, you're going to have people supporting this side, supporting that side. Like, it's always going to be this giant distraction while people actually are dying and while there actually are real world consequences going on. Now, with the protests going on, there is actually a legitimate cause, I believe. But there's also the co-opting of the narrative by these Soros-funded protesters, which is going to be about more hate for this group of people or for that group of people. And that's all just going to be this giant distraction from what's actually going on, and from all the innocent people who are actually being killed in Gaza and Israel and wherever else in the world. But like, we do need to call out the governments, we do need to call out the people who are actually causing this destruction and who are causing the damage, because we can't allow them to hide behind this group or that group in this effort to avoid judgment. And then like, when you see like the government actually passing bills that have very vague wording and are all about protecting these criminals from criticism, that's a problem. And it's a problem because like that's actually going to lead to more hate for the groups and for the people who are part of these groups who don't deserve that hate. And now, the final point I want to address in this video, I'm probably not going to have time to get to the Bart Seibel on Joe Rogan podcast yet, but like I might be addressing that in a future episode if I see anything particularly interesting from one of the clips. But I want to address this post that I saw from Joel Raffiti. Now, the post says, "You guys realize a whole new media has been created, it is thriving, and you consume it every day. It's called conspiracy media, and just like mainstream media, 95% of it is unreliable as hell." So now, I wanted to offer like a little bit of pushback to that. In response to this, I commented on the post and I said, I get what you're saying, but I'm going to push back a bit and respectfully disagree if that's cool. Now, of course, there's always going to be grifters and people profiting off fear-mongering, whether it's with the mainstream narrative or the conspiracy side. That's likely not going to change. However, I don't believe the two are the same, and it's not actually this apples to apples comparison. I know from my own case, and many others as well, that the conspiracy world of questioning everything has brought me closer to God and spirituality. As Sam Tripoli says, conspiracy leads to spirituality, most of the time. Because when you are questioning everything in your outer world, since our outer world is a reflection of our inner world, this will almost always lead to us looking deeper within. Conspiracy makes our outer world way more interesting, so therefore, our inner world must be super interesting as well. So I think, as with anything, it depends on how each of us uses it. If we use conspiracies to further doom and gloom and be like, oh, the world is ending, then of course it doesn't benefit us. But if we actually use them to ask questions and start critical thinking more as this constant curiosity, then it makes the world more interesting, and I don't see that as being a bad thing. Hope this offers a different perspective. So, he didn't actually respond to me, but I just want to say that I think everything in life is a tool. Because of this concept of duality, nothing is inherently all good or all bad, or there's very few things are all good or all bad. So I don't like this idea of demonizing everyone from a group, or demonizing all of conspiracy media, or demonizing or claiming that people who question everything are just as bad as people who question nothing. I don't see that as being the case. I think that in this case, if you question things, and if you're staying curious, and if you're staying open-minded, you're gonna ultimately realize how interesting the world is, and I see that as a positive thing. You're gonna start realizing your own power. You're gonna be connected closer to God. So even if there's always gonna be people who are gonna be grifters, who are always gonna be only trying to profit off of fear-mongering and telling you how bad the world is,
Everyone run for cover! The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
we're telling you that everything is a conspiracy. On the flip side of that, there's also going to be people who are going to use every conspiracy as a way of realizing your own power, realizing that God is real, realizing how special all of us are because all these abilities have been hidden from us, and to understand that what most conspiracies are actually about is hiding our true power.
Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
And covering up our true purpose in being here in this world, and trying to make us appear to be these tiny specks in this grand universe, when actually we're the most special things here. So once again, I'm not saying like this guy Joel Graffiti is totally off base. I think a lot of what he posts is actually interesting, but like, I don't like this idea of demonizing a whole group of people or demonizing a whole idea or a whole concept just because a few people in that group or concept are utilizing it for a bad reason. I think there's an issue when it comes to trying to be so different from everyone else, like you actually start demonizing good people who are doing good work. And maybe that's not like what his actual intention was behind it, but I just wanted to point that out. Anyways, guys, hopefully you guys found this Rabbit Hole Roundup interesting. Hopefully you guys are questioning everything yourselves. Hopefully you guys are all being truth seekers. Anyways, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Be sure to drop a like, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Stay curious, my friends.